Hey guys, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the Sorcerer. This is going to be a fantastic starter build for the Sorcerer that excels at clearing the entire screen fast. It's got great AoE damage, excellent single target damage. As you can see on the screen right now, it has no problem running into groups and deleting them. It's got great survivability, great sustain, and it's just a lot of fun to use. So let's talk about how to put this thing together so that you can have an incredibly powerful build for the launch of Diablo 4. In this guide, I'm going to cover skills and passives, as well as which class specialization you should take and how to get it, and I'm going to tell you which useful legendaries to keep an eye out for in case you find them. Although this starter build does not require any legendaries to be incredibly effective, so don't worry about that. I'll have a written guide for this build linked down in the description below. We put a lot of work into the written guide, so be sure to check them out. And if you enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe. This channel is brand new and it can definitely use the algorithmic love. First up, we've got basic skills. Basic skills deal damage and are always available to cast, right? So this first one is going to be Frostbolt. Frostbolt is going to throw a Frostbolt at the enemy, dealing damage and chilling them for 15%. When you get enemies 100% chilled, they freeze, and some nice things happen there as well. But chilling enemies have reduced movement speed. Repeatedly chilling an enemy will freeze it, right? The first passive here that we take is going to say that Frostbolt has a 15% chance to explode on chilled enemies, hitting surrounding enemies, and the chance is increased to 100% against frozen enemies. You'll chill enemies with the attack, and then if you freeze them, it's going to turn into like kind of a mini explosion that's pulsing out of them as you attack them while they're frozen. And the great thing here is that Frostbolt makes frozen enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So vulnerable enemies take 20% more damage from you. So if you fire just this into somebody, you're going to chill them and eventually freeze them and eventually make them vulnerable, causing them to take extra damage. We have a couple of other things that we're doing that are also freezing people, making them vulnerable. So this is just one small piece of the puzzle. Your basic attack isn't terribly pivotal to this build. It's everything else that's really doing the killing, but you've got to choose one. And so it's sometimes really nice to choose one that has a nice debuff attached to it. For our core skill, this is going to be our spender. So once we have enough resources, we would like to use Fireball. Pop this into a group of enemies and it does massive damage. Most of the time when we do this, it's going to kill them all. We'll walk into a group of enemies, we'll freeze them, we'll fireball them, boom, they all die. And we'll talk about how we achieve that with this build, but that requires us to get down a few more skills into this build. So we're going to take Fireball. We're going to take the first passive, which says its radius is increased up to 50% based on how far we are away from the target. And then the next one, which says Fireball's explosions, critical strike damage is increased by 10%. Each enemy hit increases the bonus by 5%, up to 25% total. So we're pretty much always going to be hitting at least 5 enemies. So we're always going to have that 25% increase. Really nice passive. For the passives in this section, Devastation is really nice. Your maximum mana is increased. This feels good because by having this, we're able to cast 1 extra Fireball before we run out of resources. So it's just nice to have there. And you've got to put a few points in here to get down to some of these lower sections anyway. Defensive skills, we're definitely going to take Frost Nova. This skill just feels so good. Unleash a Torrent of Frost, freezing enemies. So this freezes them right away for 2.38 seconds. And then the passives that we're taking, killing enemies frozen by Frost Nova reduces its cooldown by 2 seconds, up to 6 seconds per cast. So we'll pretty much always we'll walk up to a group of enemies, we'll cast our Frost Nova, we'll pop those enemies, and we'll get that 6-second reduction on it. It's worth noting that frozen enemies cannot move or attack, and enemies can be frozen repeatedly by chilling them. And this next passive, Mystical Frost Nova, is so good. Frost Nova makes enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds, increased to 8 seconds against bosses. Vulnerable enemies take 20% increased damage. So you pop this down in the middle of a group of enemies. They're all frozen, which means they're all going to take 20% more damage from you when you unload your fireballs into their face, right? It just works really well. As you can see on screen right now, it kind of looks like this when you do it right. There it is, man. And so the whole screen explodes instantly. For the passives here, I recommend Glass Cannon. You deal 18% increased damage, but take 9% more damage. This build is so tanky, you really don't have a problem staying alive, so a free 18% damage is huge. We take it. For your conjuration abilities, we're going to take Hydra. Hydra is nice. It's a non-targetable summon that you can put on the floor, and it just helps you with battles. It's really good for maybe those scary moments when the boss fight isn't going your way, or there's ads, or if ever you need a little bit of breathing room, you can throw this on the ground and kite the enemy and it will kill them for you. right? It does great damage all on its own, but it's also, you know, it gives you a lot of freedom to outplay the NPC enemies if you need to. The first passive says, while you're healthy, your cast of Hydra gain 1 additional head. Healthy just means that you're above 80% health. And then the next one, Summon Hydra. Hydra also burns enemies for an additional 12% of the damage dealt over 6 seconds. So it's just basically saying it's adding a dot, right? So Hydra's nice, good damage, really helpful, lets you outplay the NPCs if you need to. If it's a tough fight, maybe you went to something you weren't quite ready for, but you can outplay it and win anyway. Okay, for our mastery skill, we're gonna use Meteor. Meteor's gonna do a few things for us. You're gonna summon it from the sky, it's gonna hit the ground, and it's gonna do impact damage. Just boom, fire damage. Then it's gonna put a dot on the floor, and it's also going to stun the enemies. So it's gonna stun them, and they're gonna be stuck in this fire dot for a few seconds. The stun lasts for about 2 seconds, the fire dot lasts for 3 seconds, and the impact damage is instant, right? So it's doing all of that. And because of the first passive, if you hit 3 or more enemies, there's a 30% chance that a second meteor falls right away. So you might get 2 meteors out of 1 cast. And then the last passive we take is the one which causes the stun. So grab both of those. Then finally, we've got our ultimate, and we're going to take the Inferno because we're speccing into fire. And so if we find items that give extra fire damage, we can take them, right? We want to try to pick an element and kind of stick with it ideally. And so we took Inferno. Inferno creates a giant snake that vacuums all the enemies around it into the center of it and holds them there. And it's a nice 8-second dot that does a ton of damage, over 1,000 damage over 8 seconds. So that's huge, huge damage. This is your ultimate. You can only choose one ultimate. So you got to pick one. We're taking Inferno, and it's only got a 45-second cooldown, which as ultimates go, it's on the shorter side of things, which is nice. We can reuse this fairly often. And you're going to grab both passives for this. Inferno repeatedly pulls enemies in, and Supreme Inferno, which says while it's active, your pyromancy skills cost no mana. So you've got 8 seconds to unload that fireball as much and as fast as you can, okay? As for your key passive, we're going to take Isu's Ferocity. Your fire critical strike damage is increased by 25% against enemies above 50% life. Your fire critical strike chance is increased by 5% against enemies below 50%. Killing an enemy with a critical strike grants both bonuses against all enemies for 3 seconds. So really amping up your crit chance, right? The Fire Mage being all about critting and massive crits and critting on enemies that we've debuffed with vulnerable by casting our Frost Nova. So that's it for the skills and the passives. So if you open up your class specialization menu, or as it's called, the enchantment menu for the sorcerer, you can drag the fireball down here. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that when you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage. And that's going to look a little bit like this. So as you can see, it does massive damage. It's great for screen clearing. You get one enemy to die and there will be a chain reaction that causes the rest to explode as well. Really, really powerful, really great for screen clearing. Really, really fun build. As for the legendaries to keep an eye out for this build, be sure to check out the written guide linked down in the description below. We'll tell you which legendaries to look out for and where they can be found so that you can make this build as powerful as possible. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It's a new channel. It needs the algorithm love. And if you're not sure what to do next, check out one of the videos that's popping up on screen right now.